Down at the bottom of the world, in New Zealand, we've made some great film achievements. We made Lord of the Rings, and another Lord of the Rings, and another Lord of the Rings, and 3 Lord of the Rings prequels. Please, Peter Jackson, make other movies based on other concepts. Oh, so when's that Silmarillion movie coming out? But there are other great Kiwi directors who have contributed to New Zealand cinema. There's David Farrier, there's Jane Campion, and the filmmaker I wanted to talk about for the 4th installment of Best Director, Taika Waititi. Taika has 6 feature films under his belt, 4 made in New Zealand, and 2 Hollywood films. Each of these films are pretty outstanding, bringing out his great Kiwi dry humour, even in his Hollywood films. Taika has worked on many projects apart from his films, directing many New Zealand TV shows, most notably directing a few episodes of The Flight of the Conchords, a New Zealand cult show about 2 Kiwis trying to make it in America with their comedy band. He also directed many of the band's music videos.
Oh, you sexy hermaphrodite lady and ladies, you sexy lady bits, and you sexy man bits too. Even you must be into you.
He has also directed many adverts, my favourite being the in-flight safety video for Air New Zealand, appropriately called the most epic safety video ever made. It is very funny, all being references to the Lord of the Rings. Even some of the actors from the Lord of the Rings are in it. It is way more interesting than the other crap that you watch in the safety videos on other planes. Why doesn't Pan Am hire Martin Scorsese to direct their in-flight safety videos? Yeah, I just compared Taika to Martin Scorsese. Fight me. Taika's that good.
Of course it's cinema. It's at the movies. It's in cinemas. Near you.
Taika's made many short films over his career, but most notably his 2004 short film, 2 Cars, 1 Night. It is about 3 kids sitting in their parents' car while their dads are in the pub drinking. The child actors gave off a great performance, acting exactly how they would in real life, with the kids pretending to drive the cars and the boy constantly lying to the girl so he can impress her. Taika's dialogue was so authentic to what the kids would say and how they would act. Taika works with kids a lot for his films, so it seems like it's something he's passionate about. Another great thing I liked is the really cool time-lapse shots that we use frequently. These help signify the length of time that the kids were in the cars, while also making some very interesting visuals. I'm not a big fan of the black and white though. It has always seemed so pretentious when filmmakers make their films black and white, so unless it's played around with like Schindler's List and Sin City, with spots of colour being injected in, I'm not impressed. I'm not sure how you're even meant to rate a short film, as they have such a different feel than a feature length, where concepts can't be played out as well, and characters don't have time for character development. So I'm gonna give this a go watch it out of 5. It's only 11 minutes and it's on YouTube, so just watch it. You people are sleeping on this movie like Taika sleeps at the Oscars. Yeah, I said Oscars. This was nominated for the best short film of 2004. It didn't win sadly, but this publicity did help get his first feature funded, which is...
Sucker. You foolish sucker. What? Hello, is Eric there, please?
This is Taika's first feature film that came out in 2007. Eagle vs. Shark is a romantic comedy about 2 awkward New Zealanders who come together and they must confront the family problems that Jermaine Clement's character Jared has. What I like about this film is it's not just a romantic comedy about 2 hot people meeting, it's specifically about 2 outsiders with no friends who are not very conventionally attractive, and not like the people on Ready Player One, like actually awkward and unattractive.
Eagle vs. Shark, if anyone was trying to describe it, I guess they'd say it was a romantic comedy, but it's not very romantic, and often it's not, often some of the scenes aren't comedic at all, they're, kind of depressing. And so, yeah, maybe that's just my approach, or maybe the New Zealand approach.
This movie was made and set in New Zealand, most of the film taking place in a small rural New Zealand town. It was great to see New Zealand on the big screen, without it being for Lord of the Rings. There was a park in the film that had a very interesting hamster wheel thing, where kids could run around on. It is such a Kiwi thing to see at a playground. It brings such a level of quirkiness to the film. The sound design helped increase the New Zealand feel for me, as you could always hear New Zealand birds chirping in the background and cicadas at night. A very rural feel. And the 2 leads are superb. Lauren Horsley plays Lily, a shy girl who lives with her brother and works at a local fast food restaurant, who doesn't have many friends. And the timid way she speaks is very interesting to watch. The audience really needs to pay attention if they want to not miss any dialogue. Jermaine Clement, one of the band members of the Flight of the Conchords, gives a great performance as well. His character Jared is very awkward with Lily and finds it hard to appropriately communicate with her. He seems like a child, always losing his temper and constantly lying, kinda like he hasn't grown up at all. Jared lives in the shadow of his dead brother, who his family idolizes. During the film, Jared says and does things so that he can get his father's attention, so that he can get out of his brother's shadow. The perfect brother is played by Taika himself, and is the first instance of him playing a role in one of his own movies, which he does quite frequently. It seems a bit self-centered to play a role of a perfect brother in your own film. Kinda seems very Neil Breen-esque, who always plays the role of a #1 hacker or just a straight-up messiah, but as we get more backstory throughout the film, it seems that Taika's character is not so perfect after all. I really like the stop-motion sections in this film. There is an anthology of segments about 2 rotten apple cores growing legs and finding each other.
Lauren Horsley, when she was a little kid, she used to eat an apple and then she threw the core away. She'd spend the whole day really worried about the apple core and thinking, I hope he's okay, I hope he's not too lonely.
It is a metaphor for the 2 main characters' relationship, 2 unwanted, discarded things coming together. A pretty obvious metaphor, but interesting nonetheless. However, I think these apple segments could have been better in their own short film. Not sure. I do really like this film, giving it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. I think it may be my Kiwi biases having it increase the score slightly, but that's just how it be. Not sure if a person outside of New Zealand could really appreciate this film as much as me. So if that applies to you, better not watch this one just yet. Watch the rest of his filmography and come back to it later. Also, is this an American Beauty reference? Taika, I need answers.
Kia ora, my name is Boy, and welcome to my interesting world.
Boy is Taika's 2010 follow-up to Eagle vs. Shark, and it is an improvement in every way. It is a film about a small Maori boy in Rutakaka called Alaman, but he goes by Boy. It is a coming-of-age story about Boy living in a small rural New Zealand town, trying to make sense of the world, while he is coming to grips that his dad isn't the amazing man that he always thought he was. The Rutakaka setting is like its own character, as everything in the small town feels so alive with interesting things going on. This is set during the 1980s, a very pivotal time for New Zealand. During this time, New Zealand had just participated in its first war separate from England, the Vietnam War, and we were coming to grips with becoming our own country and finding our way in the world.
We went through a lot of social and political changes. As Māori, we were sort of slowly beginning to find ourselves and become proud of our own culture again. So it's it's actually a really important decade in New Zealand's history.
This was also a time when New Zealand was making an international stand about nuclear weapons and banning them from the Pacific, which led to the sinking of the Rainbow Warrior. Boy being a coming-of-age story. All the while, New Zealand itself is coming to age around him is very interesting to watch. There are great Kiwi things in the background that fit the time period so well, like anti-nuclear graffiti and the Goodnight Kiwi on the TV, which was a way to signify the end of broadcast television for the night. This is actually Taika's hometown, so he was able to find amazing locations to shoot, and it felt very personal.
I wanted to shoot in my hometown because that's where I grew up, and I'd set, if I was going to write a film about kids growing up in the country, it was just the obvious settings.
It is like he is making this film about himself, even though it is not autobiographic. The child actors were really good, as good or even better than the kids in Taika's short film. James Rolston did a great job playing Boy, being so authentic to how children talk, benefited by Taika's great Kiwi dialogue.
Hurry up, Egg! What are you doing, Egg? Hey, hello, Egg. It's a cuckoo egg. Hurry up, you Egg!
But the person who stole the show in this movie was Taika himself. He played the role of Boy's deadbeat dad, and frankly, it is the best acting he has ever done. The character is essentially a man-child, who has never grown up and is super immature, but it's not as fire as the characters in movies such as Step Brothers. It walks a fine line. He is such an interesting character, certainly not fit to be a father, but all he wants to do is to be loved and accepted by other people around him. He is very pathetic, and even though he is the antagonist of Boy's story, I'm still kind of rooting for him, being very empathetic. Boy imagines how he'd like his father to act, and in these imagination sequences, Taika does some very hilarious things, like pretend to be a samurai or do an impersonation of Michael Jackson. There are some great supporting characters too, most notably Rachel House, who plays Boy's auntie. She is very stern and loving, and even though she only has a very minor role, I really like her. House is in most of Taika's films, and is pretty enjoyable in all of them. The soundtrack was pretty exceptional too. Many great Kiwi songs featured, such as Po Yeah, a very famous New Zealand Maori song from the 80s. The Phoenix Foundation also did many of the songs for the soundtrack. They did a large proportion of the music in Eagle vs. Shark, so it's good to see Taika again giving work to great Kiwi indie bands. Apparently Taika had the opportunity to use some famous licensed Michael Jackson songs for the film, as Boy's character was a big Michael Jackson fan, but Taika didn't think that it fit the setting, and opted to go with a Kiwi soundtrack, a decision I commend him for, as the Michael Jackson soundtrack might have made the film more palatable for international audiences, but the final soundtrack kept the movie very Kiwi. Similar to the stop motion sections in Eagle vs. Shark, There was some very interesting hand-drawn flipbook animation of things that the characters were imagining. It was very interesting to see, making some great shots, and also emphasizing that these are the dreams of children, as they're drawn very crudely and drawn with crayon. The film actually started as an extended version of Taika's film 2 Cars 1 Night. There are a few scenes of Boy and his brother being left in the car while their dad is at the pub, just like the short. These scenes were in colour, which is definitely an improvement from the short, but the cool time-lapse shots were no longer present. I wouldn't have wanted an exact replica of the short though, so I do like what this film has done, inspired by the short but not a replication. This film had a great impact in New Zealand, becoming the highest nationally grossing New Zealand film ever, only eventually being beaten by Taika's fourth film, Hunt for the Wilderpeople in 2016. Kiwis were so happy to be able to identify with a film that wasn't filled with hobbits. This film was very important to the legacy of New Zealand film, and even though it wasn't loved overseas as much, doesn't make it any less special. I absolutely love this film. 5 stars. And unlike Evil vs. Shark, I don't think that you have to be a Kiwi to appreciate this film, even though it is very Kiwi. It is very funny, and the themes do translate well to other cultures. So I'm going to stop this video here. Don't want the video to be too long. Part 2 coming soon, so...
Hey, subscribe!
And I'm planning on doing more of these, so let me know what directors' filmographies you'd like me to review next. Might do a Tom Ford video after I finish Taika's second part, not sure.